This month's Daf Yomi is sponsored by Duvi and Tehila Catcher, B'schus Refuah Shema for Ephraim ben Shifra. And Daf Yomi for this month is also sponsored by the Durbach, Abudi, and Mandel families in honor of the engagement of Shol Harris to Meir Mandel. Mazel tov. They should build a Bayis Neman B'Yisrael, fill a Torah, Simcha, and Bracha. And Monday's Daf, that's today, is sponsored by Yankee and Megan Flussberg. Ilui Nishmas, Yankee's father, Yehuda Aryeh Ben Harav Avraham Chaim, whose yurtzeit is the 5th of Shvat. So,
which is today, right?
Yes,
it was. Because there's another, a chazan also passed away today, Betsy Miller.
Oh, really? Okay.
Right.
It's another chazan. Mm-hmm. And coffee for the base medrash, right? Is that sponsored by Rabbi Nota and Dr. Milan Glogauer in honor of all the incredible Torah learning that's happening at Kahal Yereim. And so that's thanks to them as well. We are at the Mishnah, the bottom of Mem Daled Amud Beis. Haya Rachok Mi Beis Haskila. So this fellow was continuing on towards his execution. So when he got to be within when he was Arba Amos, when he was within 4 Amos, once he was 4 Amos away from the place where he was going to get his skila punishment. Mafshitin oso as bigadov. So they would remove his garments from him. Haish mechasin oso milifanov, ve'aisha milifanea umeachareha. For a man, they would just cover him slightly in front, right? The idea is that the garment, as we're gonna see, the garment might prevent you from having a quick, swift death. So therefore, removing the garment was in order to be able to enhance make the person
make it more slowly and painful.
Less painful, right, correct. Make the death more quick, expeditious. But by the woman, so we're going to add clothing to her front and back. Div Rabbi Yehuda, so Rabbi Yehuda says, V'cham says, Ha'ish niskal arum. The Chachamim say that a man is stoned when he is not wearing any clothing. Ve'ein ha'isha niskelas aruma. The Chachamim say that a woman is not stoned when she is unclothed. Okay, so we're going to explain what the argument there is momentarily. We turn to Memhei Amud Aleph in the Gemara Tana Rabbanan. Ha'ish mechasin oso perak echad milfanov. A man is covered with a small piece of garment in front of him. Ve'isha shnei prakim, and the woman gets 2 segments of clothing. Bein milfaneha, bein milacher, one in front and one in back. Mipnei, why shekula erva? Because her erva is visible from the front and the back, so therefore it is appropriate to be able to cover it in both places. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says. The Chachamim says, Ha'ish niskal arum, a man is stoned when not wearing any garments. Ve'ina ish niskal sarumba, but a woman is not stoned when she is not wearing any garments. And my time Aihu, what is the rationale behind the 2 different viewpoints? The Rabbanan Amar Kra, the Rabbanan say, the pasuk says, V'ragmu oso, that you are going to stone him. So, my oso, what do you do with that means? You stone him, right? You could just say that he is stoned. Why does it have to have the extra word there of oso? So they say, because ilema oso velo oso, if you mean that you're going to stone him, but not her, meaning that the punishment of stoning applies to a man, but not to a woman, v'aksiv v'otzeisa es ha'ish hahu o es ha'ish hahi. It says right in the psukim, that you are going to take out the man or the woman who are getting the death penalty. So you clearly see the death penalty is equally applicable for men and for women. Ela my oso. So what are you going to use the word oso for? It means oso below chesuso. So that means that he is stoned oso by himself, meaning without any garments. But her ha osa bichsusa. But for a woman, she can wear her garments while she is being stoned.
No garment, you mean he gets stoned while naked?
Yes, right? Other than the little piece of garment that they're going to provide for minimal coverage. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. That's how the Chachamim learn it. So the Chachamim say that the requirement to be stoned without wearing any garments is only for the man, but since it uses the word oso for him, not for her, that this is a rule by him, but not for her. So Rabbi Yehuda says, oso below chsuso, Rabbi Yehuda says, you're right, that's the meaning of the word oso, means him without garment, but it means lo shna ish v'lo shna isha. It makes no difference. He doesn't look at the he doesn't look at the gender of the word, whether oso happens to be talking about a male gender, it does not matter. It's just to tell me that it means no without the garments, and it does not matter whether it's for men or for women. Now, what is the rationale behind such an approach? The Rabbanan are worried that if you have a unclothed woman, so then it will cause people to have inappropriate thoughts. So that's why you don't want to be able to have such a thing in public. So Rabbi Yehuda says that's not something we're worried about at the moment of execution. That's not our concern. But we have the exact opposite opinions. Ditznan, as we learned in the Mishnah. Hakoin oches bibgadeha. When we're talking about a woman who is accused of being a sota. So part of the process is that you have to tear her garment. So it says in the Mishnah, the Kohen grabs, in Masechah Sota, the Kohen grabs her garment. Im nikra'u nikra'u ve'im niframu niframu. If it tears, it tears. If it gets torn away completely, it gets torn away completely. Ad shemegala es liba, until her heart is exposed. V'soser es se'ara, and then he uncovers her hair. Now, that's what the Chachamim say to do. So that implies that the Chachamim are not worried or concerned about the fact that she's not
if she's
clothed.
a sota, they remove her hair.
That's correct.
Covering only.
Yeah. Well, they don't know yet.
Right, but that was
she's
the whole,
accused
that
of being a
whole,
sota.
Right, that was the whole chiddush because that like it was. Isn't that even where we learn about the uncovering of hair?
That is how we know that the other women's hair is covered. Correct.
Okay, sorry.
So now Rabbi Yehuda says, Im haya liba no'eh, lo haya megalehu. That was not the case if she was attractive, right? So if that is the case, then that would not be the appropriate thing to do. V'im haya se'ara na'ara, lo haya sosro. And if she has nice hair, they also likewise don't uncover it. I don't know which is like the insult, right? It's saying, guess what? We don't have to worry about that for you, right? I don't know.
Because the hair could make them attractive.
Yeah. So I presume that they just did. It must have been that Rabbi Yehuda's point is that we just don't do that because she would be attractive and therefore inappropriate to be able to unclothe. Now, that's exactly the opposite opinion as Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim here. Rabbi Yehuda, when it comes to the death penalty, says that we are going to have her undressed, but yet when it comes to the sota, we say she's not allowed to be undressed, and for the chachamim, vice versa. So Amarabba Hasam Hainu Taima, I'll tell you the difference, he says. Shema Timtza mi based in Zakah, v'yizgaru ba'pirchei kahuna. Because she may get out of this sota business and wind up living. And if that's the case, so then there will be young Kohanim that are there in the Beis HaMikdash who then may have an attraction towards her. And since she'll still be alive, so that is something that we are worried about. But hacha, ha mikatla. But here, the lady's going to be dead in a few minutes anyway. So therefore, what are you worried about? Somebody's going to be attracted to her. Nobody's going to have a chance to do any Averos in any event, right? She's going to be dead soon. So therefore, that's why we're worried about it when it comes to sota. Rabbi Yehuda's worried about it when it comes to sota, but he's not worried about it when it comes to the death penalty. Now, maybe he'll see this unclothed woman and he's going to say, you know what? I am desirous of doing an avera with somebody else. Amarabba Gmiri, we have a tradition. Ein Yitzhahara Sholeit Ela B'misha Einaf Rose. We have a tradition. The Yitzhahara is only attracted to what it sees, right? So therefore, the Yitzhahara is only going after whatever is in front of it right now. So therefore, if this lady's dead, that's the end of the story. Amar Rava. So Rava says that's a nice answer according to Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda kasha. D'Rabbanan lo kasha. But the fact of the rabbis, their opinion wasn't problematic. You didn't explain them. Why is it that they are not concerned when it comes to the sota, but they are concerned by the death penalty? Ela Marava, the Rabbi Yehuda lo kasha kedeshanin. So he says, well, Rabbi Yehuda's answer is like we said. That's a fair answer. But the Rabbanan nami lo kasha. The Rabbanan's is also not a contradiction because Amar Kro, the pasuk says, "V'nosru kol hanoshim v'lo tasena kezamas china." Kezimas chena. Sorry, I have to pronounce it right. The pasuk in Yechezkel says that you're going to destroy all of the inappropriate behaviors from the world. V'nivasru kol hanashrim v'lo tasena kezimas chena. Right? They have to. Do you have to be able to show this to all the women that they should be able to learn from this behavior, right? So therefore, when it comes to the hirhor, you're right. We're worried about it. We're worried about somebody being able to see this lady and they'll be attracted, and that would be inappropriate. Okay, so that's something that we're worried about when it comes to Misa. But when it comes to Sota, we have an overarching greater concern, and that is we want to be able to make sure that everybody and all the ladies see this is the punishment that happens to somebody who is a Sota. And therefore, since we have a greater concern, okay, you're right, it is a problem that people will see you're unclothed, but it is more important that the women see and not practice this behavior. So that is why it is important. So hacha ein lecha yisur gadol mizeh, and so therefore there will be no greater warning than observing this. So the fact is, by the misa, right? So we don't have to uncover her because the fact is she's getting killed. So therefore, there's no greater warning from doing the wrong things than that. The punishment is itself already great enough that we don't have to worry about embarrassing her. So if we say, okay, great, but you really want to stop people from doing averos, do both. You're going to kill her. That's going to scare people, right? It'll be a deterrent, but also embarrass her. And that'll also be a deterrent. So why not do both things? So Rav Nachman, Amar Rabbi Bar Avua. So Rav Nachman says, name Rabbi Avua. Amar Kral, the pasuk says, "V'yahavta l'recha kamocha." There's an interesting application of the pasuk. You should love your fellow Jew.
Is that from Rabbi Kiva?
It is from a pasuk, right? It is actually from a pasuk. The pasuk is in Dvarim, right? Sorry, nope, that's not where this pasuk is from. Yeah, looking where it is. Vayikra, right? Lo sikam v'lo sitor. You should not get any, not want to be able to get any vengeance or have any jealousy. You should love your fellow Jew like you love yourself, right? Just like yourself. Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. So, however, this loving your fellow Jew tells us baro lo misa yafe, that you have to be able to kill the person in the best possible way, right? So, therefore, why embarrass her, right? That's not going to be a positive. That's not going to be a nice thing for you to do. You want to be able to make an example out of her. You're already making an example out of her. You want to make a double example out of her. Pasuk says v'yahavta l'recha kamocha.
It's for her, right? We get schus for the busha that we experience. It's the same with the misa. The misa is like
people nevertheless choose not to have busha.
Right.
Busha means
embarrassment.
Nobody ever chooses busha. But
that's the point.
No. By experiencing busha, you get schut.
But we are being told not to choose busha for her.
Right. Because of
Okay. So lema de Rav Nachman tanahi. So let's say this statement of Rav Nachman is an argument, meaning there's two different things v'yahavta l'recha kamocha could be telling us. Here we're saying v'yahavta l'recha kamocha tells us that she should be dressed because we don't want to embarrass her. So, but on the other hand, we also said v'yahavta l'recha kamocha that we want to be able to have her undressed so that the misa will be faster. So the answer is lo. Tikul yama is lahud Rav Nachman. Everybody agrees at this point of Rav Nachman. So what's the argument then between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim? Mar savar bizyoni diinish adifa leitfei mi nicha degufei umar savar nicha degufei adif mi bizyoni. But that's the argument. The argument is, which is the greater consideration? Once the Torah tells us that you have to pick the nicer misa, the question is the nicer misa that she shouldn't be dressed, the misa will be faster? Or is the nicer misa she should be dressed so she should be less embarrassed? So therefore, that is the subject of argument between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, and that is why we have that dispute, whether she should be dressed or not. Okay, so that is next Mishnah. It's nice we move from coast to coast in a second here.
Interesting.
No. Next Mishnah. Beis Askila. We get to the place of the execution. The place for the execution was Hayagavoha Shtei Komos. It was 2 stories high, right? Each koma is considered the height of a person, right? Mm-hmm. So it's double the height of a person. Echad min ha'edim dochvo al masnov. So one of the witnesses pushes him off backwards falls backwards. Nepach al libo, right? Then, so he falls, he's turned over onto his heart, right? If he turns over in his heart, hofcho al masnov. Then when we when he hits the ground, we turn him so he's lying on his back again. V'meisba, if he dies from that fall, yotza, then that's fine. That's good. That is considered to be an execution. V'im lav, if not, hasheni notel asa even, then the second witness is going to take the stone, v'nosno al libo, and throws it onto his torso. V'im mace, if he dies if he dies with that, yotza, then that is the execution. V'im lav, and if he doesn't die from that, regim waso b'chol Yisrael, then everybody throws rocks at him. Shnei the pasuk says, "Yalla edem tiyeh bo b'rishona." The witnesses have to have the first strike. Lahami, so in order to kill him, v'yad kol ambach rona, and the hand of the rest of the people are afterwards. So you see from there that the witnesses go first. So,
okay, fine. I'm just.
Yep.
Never mind.
Good.
Yeah, I'm just rereading the Mishnah just to understand it. So, okay, basically, so there's two people standing.
No, one person is standing at a height of two people. Right? He is standing from a high place.
Okay.
Right?
Why does it say tall person?
Sorry, if he's a tall person.
Yeah.
Well, what's the height of two people, right? Right. Says the Gemara, Tana, the koma shalo, and if you're including the height of the person himself, harikan shalosh, that makes three. The distance that he's actually falling is the height of three people, 3 stories. Who needs the person to fall that far in order to die, right? The idea is that you're trying to throw him from a high enough distance that he will die immediately as he hits the ground. So, uraminhu, we have a contradiction. When it comes to an ox falling into a pit, we said that if an ox falls into a pit that's 10 tfachim deep, so then that is considered to be a sufficient depth to kill an ox.
I think we see that in Bava Metzia, right?
That's correct. In Bava Metzia, that's where we find it. So therefore, a distance of falling of 10 tfachim is enough to kill somebody. So why do we need to make it this tall? So the answer is, af kol kedei lahamis asar tfachim, let's say that all the circumstances for killing somebody only needs to be 10 tfachim high. So Rav Nachman, Amar Rabbi Barvua, Amar Kral, the pasuk says, v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, right? You have to love your neighbor like yourself. Barur lo misa yafe, you have to choose a good death. Ihachi, okay, if that's the case, that the idea is to kill him fast. Ligav hiha. I'm trying to see if I'm pronouncing that right. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But I have to go to the next volume. Hang on 1 second. Lig v'hei?
Yes.
Right, okay, good, thank you. I wasn't going to be able to pronounce that properly. Change Gemaras, okay. So, make him be taller, lift him higher, tfei, more, mishum demin navel, because the answer is, because then, when he hits the ground, it will be disgusting, right? We don't want to make it so that it's a disgusting mess, because then it's a disgrace to the body. So we want it to be high enough so that the person will die immediately, but we want it to be low enough that the body does not become messy. One of the witnesses pushes him. Tana Rabbanan. How do you know you have to push the person off? Talmud Lomar, Yaro, right? You have to cast, right? Yaro, it says by the stoning. Actually, we're going to see that this is a pasuk by a person. The Jewish people were commanded not to go up onto Har Sinai. If they do, they were supposed to get stoned. And it says, O Yaro Yireh, O Sako Yisakel, that they will either throw at them or they will be stoned.
Or stone maybe falling down from the mountain. Kill them.
No, a stone will not fall down from the mountain. You're going to take them from the mountain and you're going to bring them to the Beis HaSkila to give them a Misas Beistin, right? It's not a Min HaShemayim punishment. So, Minayin Shebes Skila, how do we know that it is supposed to be done with skila throwing a stone? Talmud Lomar Sakol, right? It's supposed to be done with throwing a stone. Uminayin Shebes Skila ubedichia. So how do I know that I'm also Yotzei? If the person gets punished with both, if the person dies with both, Talmud Lomar Sakol Yisakel, O Yaro Yareh. Either he can be stoned or he can be thrown off the height. Whichever of those two kill him, that is considered to be satisfactory for Misa. Uminayin She'im Meis Bedichia Yatza. How do I know that if you don't get to the stoning, let's say all you did was throw him off, that would be sufficient? Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, O Yaro Yareh, meaning or, right? That's a possibility. He only gets killed by the being cast off. Minayin Sha'af Lidoros Kain. Okay, so now that is the case, you've told me that we learn these three things, right? We learned that you have to give the guy a push. We learned that he can be killed by just the fall. You learned that he can be killed by a combination of the fall plus the stoning. Well,
or if he just kill himself.
No, he cannot kill himself, right? Killing himself is not the same thing as Mises Bastin, right? So this is a Mises Bastin, has to be done in one of these ways. But how do we know that if the source is from Har Sinai, how do we know that that is going to be the case by all time? So therefore, Talmud Lomar, we're on top of Mem Ham and Beis, Sakol Yisakel, that he can be stoned in any event, meaning that means Yisakel in the future tense, that he will be stoned, and he can be stoned in the future in the same kind of a way. V'im lav eid hasheni notelas Evan. Then we said, okay, if he gets pushed off and then he does not die, so then the second witness comes and he takes a rock and throws it upon him. Notel, how can the one witness take this rock? V'hatanya, we learn in a brayso. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Evan ha'isa sham masui shnei bnei adam. At the execution area, there was a rock that was there, and it was the size enough that it took two people to lift it. Note law. Bo, he would pick it up and he would throw it onto the person who was getting killed.
That would for sure kill him right away if you need to do it.
That's right. So im meis ba, if he dies with that yotza, then he's yotze. Now, how can our Mishnah say that you're supposed to have one witness throw this if it's a rock that takes two people to carry? Well, the Gemara says, according to your reasoning, so then tikshelach higufa, you have to look at this Mishnah itself. This price itself is problematic because it says mostly shnei bnei adam, that the stone was heavy enough to be carried by two people. Notla v'notla al libo, then it says that he picks it up and throws it on him. So again, how's he picking it up if it's supposed to be picked up by two people?
He probably went to the gym and we.
You'd still have to be able to pick up something that two people can pick up. Ella, and plus, we don't have enough time for him to go to the gym, right? Because he was just a witness earlier today, and he's being given Ella de medali le behade chavrei. Rather, what happens is they lift it up together. He and his friend lift it up, v'shadi la ihu, and then he throws it down by himself. He can't hold it, so he's holding it up, and then he can't hold it, so he throws it harder downward. Kihechi de tesi mirazia, so that it will come with extra strength. Right, it's an extra heavy stone. It's only getting pushed in the direction of the person who died. That's what's happening here. So therefore, that's what's happening. One person is doing the pushing. One person helps lift it. Once it's up, then the guy he can't hold it. He's got to throw it down.
These are the witnesses.
This is the witness.
So the elderly or the infirm cannot be witnesses. Then.
He can. We're going to see one second, but you're going to ask that question, and we're going to see circumstances that there are going to be circumstances where the witnesses' ability to perform this is going to limit what they can actually do. V'ilav regimoso b'chol Yisrael. So if that doesn't kill him, then everybody throws the rocks. V'hatanya miolam lo shana ba'odam. We have a brisa that says that it never happened. We never ever had to have any circumstances. That was always enough to kill the person. So how does the Mishnah say that you're supposed to throw rocks afterwards if we know that never happens? So the answer is Mikamina David. Our Mishnah doesn't say that you're supposed to do that. Kamina. We're saying that if it was necessary, that would be the next step, right? It just happens to be that we never got to that next step. It was never necessary. Amar Mar, Evan Haisa. Now in the Brisa said there was a rock there. V'hatanya. Achas Evan Sheniskal Ba, v'achas Eitz Shenitla Alav. Right? But wait a second. You're telling me one brisa says that there was a stone that was there. They would use the stone for killing the person. But one second, we have this other brisa that says that the stone that they used for stoning, the wood that they used for hanging the body, also the sword that they used to kill the person, or the cloth that they used to strangle, kula nikvarin imo. All of them were buried together with the mace. So therefore, how do you use the same stone if that stone gets buried with the body every time? So the answer is lo tzricha de mesakni umaisi achrini chilufayhu. So what we do is each time you replace the rock with a new one and reset up the place of the execution. You're right, it's not the same rock, but we would find another rock and put it in place so that the next execution would happen. The rock was there.
Comparable size.
Correct. They went exploring. They found the right rock that they
needed. Or uses a rope and lure him into a trap, and then kill him right there by cutting the rope.
What are you talking about? Which rope?
For stoning, right?
Yes.
You touch a rock.
So we're going to remember following the procedure the Mishnah prescribes, right? So we're pushing him off, we're throwing a rock on. No, we don't get fancy, right? The easiest, the less, the better, right?
Sounds such a. Why the? I mean, I guess that's supposed to be more.
This is one of the harder ones, right? This is not so gentle.
They're throwing it at. They have to throw the rock at the chest, at the heart, lady, right?
Right. Now,
Sure, it wasn't such a common occurrence, right? Like, didn't you say that?
we're going to see it's very uncommon.
Right.
So now, Nikbar and Imo, the rock is supposed to be buried together with the person. V'atanya, we learn a brisa. In Nikbar and Imo, we don't bury the rock with the person. One brisa says we do, one says we don't. Some Rav Papa, my Imo, so Rav Papa says you're right. When it says you bury the rock with the person, Imo b'tfiso so. You don't bury it in the grave with him. You bury it in his vicinity, within the 4 amos of where the person's buried. But it's not literally together. No, not a headstone. The stone that he got stoned with.
I know, but it doesn't become the headstone.
No, it doesn't become the headstone. Yeah, that'll be gruesome. Yeah.
That's an insult to injury.
Amar Shmuel nikta'a yad ha'edim. Now this is where Aviv's question comes in. Let's say the witness loses a hand. Okay, the witness loses his hand. So then potter. Now you can't carry out the death sentence. Why? My time, what's the reason? Because you need the hand of the witness to be first. But you can't have that. Guy's got no hand. So therefore,
He has another hand, doesn't he?
seems like there's no misa. Huh?
Doesn't he have a second hand you can use?
Yes, it seems like, well, yad implies two, I guess. Right? It's a good point. Right?
They want the weight of the stone to be held by 2 hands.
So now, elameata. So if that's the case, so then edim gitmin de meikara hachinami de psili. So then, okay, that means if I've got a witness that comes in, he's got no hands, so we should never allow him to be a witness in the first place, because you can't kill the person based on his testimony anyway. We should invalidate him as a witness. No, shani hasam. That's different because domar kro yad ha'edim shahisa kvar. It means whatever his hands were at the time of the sentencing. Meaning, if he had hands that got cut off at the wrist, so then his forearms were his hands. That's considered his hands. But we're excluding a circumstance where a person had hands, and then sometime between the end of the court case and the misa and the death sentence, the guy loses a hand. Then, yeah, you're right. Then you can't excommunicate him. I mean, you can't execute him, right? So that sort of answers your question, right? So the fellow is old. We don't put that one in. But theoretically, he could lose a hand, and then that could exclude the execution.
Wow. Kind of point an executioner in his place, in the steed.
No, right? Because you got to Adam Yebo Rishon. No,
That's it.
can't get misa. That's it.
Wow.
So Meisvei. So he asked the following
But
question.
why? Like we have a second step where everybody throws a stone. At that point, you would figure that we just go to the.
Yeah, but you can't get to the second stage without getting to the first stage. Right? Now, what's bothering you is the question that when the Torah says, first this happens and then this happens, does the Torah really mean that this first has to happen first and then this has to happen second? Or is the Torah just giving you an illustration of a proceeding so that if one step doesn't happen to happen, then you can move on to stage 2?
Right. Also,
Seems to be like you would have presumed, right? The way that you've been reading the Torah for all these years is, the witnesses come first. Okay, the witness can't do it, so then you go right to the next step, right?
Right.
Why does it have to be? The Yarein has to. You cannot skip a stage. The Gemara is going to discuss those two perspectives of how you read psukim, right?
Or you get a shaliach.
Or
Stone thrower, I don't know.
official designated executioner, right? So now, kol makom sheyeuduhu shnayim v'yomru me'idin anu b'ish ploni shenigbar dino bebeisdin. Let's say we have a circumstance. 1 second. What we're saying is that the only way to execute a person is if the witnesses themselves are the ones who are doing the beginning of the execution. So now, if that's the case, let's say 2 witnesses come into court and they don't tell the whole court case. They just say, we were at another Beis Din and this guy's a fugitive from justice. We, the 2 of us, were at a court case where this fellow was found guilty and he's supposed to be executed. And so now their testimony has nothing to do with the murder or the Mechil Shabbos that he did or anything like that. They're just testifying that another court found him guilty. Based on that testimony, you can execute somebody, right? So they're not actually testifying about what he did, but they're testifying that this is what occurred. So now, ploniu Edav. It says so and so and so and so and so and so are the witnesses. Hareza yehareg. So then that's enough to be able to kill the person. So now, 1 second. How are you killing the person? Who are the witnesses of what the original crime was? They're not here. All you've got are witnesses to the fact that the person escaped his execution, right? We don't have witnesses. We don't have the original witnesses that testify to what he actually did. So without those witnesses, how can you carry out the execution? So Tirgama Shmuel. So Shmuel says, Bahain Hain Edav. He says, yeah, the only way that would work, Shmuel says, you're right. The only way that would work is if the two witnesses who came and testified that he escaped from his execution were the same two witnesses that testified about what he did wrong in the first place. That's the only circumstance.
So wait, I'm assuming then if the hand cut off is enough.
Yes.
Kol Chomer, if one of the witnesses dies.
Yep. True. Yep.
Lauter.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
So now, Mi ba'inan kra kedechsiv. Problem is now we're going to ask Brian's question. Do you need a pasuk? Does it really have to be in this order? Meaning the pasuk says, the first comes the witnesses and then everybody else. Is that how you read the psukim? Or is there a process? Meaning if there are witnesses, great, and then if their witnesses are there, then great, and if they're not there, then we move on to everybody else. Ve'atanya, we're in a brisa. Mos yumas hamakeh. Am I reading that right? Mos yumas hamakeh. Yep, hamakeh. Rotzeachu. Right? You kill the person who is the one who committed the murder. He's a murderer. Ein li el b'misa haksuva bo. Minayin she'iyata yachol lahamiso b'misa haksuva bo. Shata hamiso b'chol misa shata yachol lamiso. So that means the person is supposed to be killed. He's a murderer. He's supposed to be put to death. Okay, so that means that he's only supposed to get hereg with a sword, sayif. That's the misa. That's the execution he's supposed to get for murdering somebody. How do I know that if we're unable, let's say the guy's running away and he's escaping, how do I know that since he's liable for a death sentence, I can kill him in any misa that I can? Talmud lomar mos yumas hamakeh mikol makom. I can kill him with any type of misa if I cannot commit the execution. So 1 second, the pasuk literally says, here's the execution you perform. And now you're telling me, okay, that is ideal. But if you can't perform that execution, then go to backup plan B. Well, if that's the case, now this is a contradiction because you just told me when it comes to skila that the witnesses go first and there is no plan B. If the witnesses can't do it, then there's no execution. So why is there a plan B when it comes to the murder case? And why is there no plan B when it comes to the stoning case? Shani Halsam, that's different over there. Domakra, mos yumos. That's different because when it comes to the execution of the murderer, it says he shall surely die. Tells you that you should follow a backup plan and kill him in other ways. Veligmar mine. So then why don't we learn from it? Meaning if that's the case when it comes to the death penalty by a murderer, why shouldn't that be the death penalty by anybody else? The answer is because we have what's called a shnei ksuvim habayin ke'echad. When the Torah tells us something one time, right? So we presume that all cases that are similar to the circumstances that the Torah is talking about, the same thing will apply. So if the Torah had only told me to follow my backup plan and commit and execute somebody in any way that we can, then it only mentioned that one time, then I would have said that applies to all Misa cases. But now that the Torah says that you shall surely die in any way that you can kill him in two circumstances. One, when there's a based-in death penalty, and two, when there's an accidental murder or negligent murder, and now the relative is going after to kill him, he can kill him in any way that he can. He's not required to kill him in a specific execution-style murder, right? Vengeance killing. He can kill him in any way that he wants to. So, therefore, it becomes a shnei ksuvim bayin ke'echad. There are two verses. Why does the Torah have to write it a second time? If the Torah meant to apply it in all cases, it could have written it once and it would have applied in all cases anyway. Right. The fact that it's written a second time means to exclude it from all other cases except these two. Meaning, whenever it's written in the Torah, the same thing twice, ein malam din Ein Malamdin Rotseach. So Ein Malamdin. So we're not going to learn from it, right? That's just going to be the rule by those cases. Now Rotseach Hodamran. So the pasuk by the murderer Mos Yimas Harotseach. That's the pasuk we just said. Go Hadam by the person who is creating a vengeance killing for a person who negligently killed his relative. So where's that? Where's that? Detanya we learn in Brisa. Go Hadam Yamis es Harotseach. The Go Hadam will kill the murderer. Mitzvah begoel adam. It's a mitzvah for a goel adam to do it. Now, this is the thing, right? The goel adam says he's supposed to do it. So therefore, we would imply that based on the way the pasuk is written, if there's no goel adam, then nobody kills him, right? That's it. He's off. Uminayim shim lo goel adam, shein lo goel. Shebeistim mamidim lo goel. How do I know that if there is no goel, based in appoints a court-appointed person to chase after him? Shenemar befig ovo, when he meets him, mikol makom, meaning that he can come in contact with this goel adam in any event. There will be somebody the court will appoint for that task, for that responsibility. So therefore, under these unusual two circumstances, then even if the pasuk cannot be carried out exactly as is, we're going to go to backup plan B.
What does that mean? Befigo.
When he encounters him, right? He kills him when he encounters him.
Makom, in all places.
In any circumstance.
Why don't they say that Mikol Makom means like...
Well, no, the Mikol Makom is the Gemara's language.
Oh.
Right? Befig ovo, when he meets him, when he encounters him, implies that encounter can take place in any circumstance.
Right, that he can kill him in any
circumstance. Even if there is no goal, therefore we're going to include, even if he's a goal, we already know the goal Adam supposed to kill him in any circumstance. The answer is that even in the circumstance where there's no goal Adam, the base is going to appoint one to encounter him.
And that would be everybody else. That was everybody else throwing the stone.
No, everyone else throwing the stone we don't apply it to. Now, the point is that we only apply.
Make it if another goal done.
Yes, not if he can't make it, if he doesn't exist, right?
Well, that's the excluded case.
That's correct. These are two excluded cases. Every other time, we need to have the misa exactly as the Torah sets aside. Amalei Markashisha Brei Rav Chisda LeRav Ashi. So Markashisha Brei Rav Chisda says to Rav Ashi, Milo Ba'inan Kra Kidich. But 1 second. Isn't it true that we need a pasuk to be as explicitly as written? Now we're going to prove it the other way, right? Up until this point, we didn't. We proved against not saying. Now we're going to prove for it. V'hatzna, we learn a Mishnah. Haya echad mehen gidem o ilaim. Let's say we have one of the witnesses is he's missing a hand, or he is missing. He's cannot cannot walk. O chiger o suma, or the person is lame. Or blind, or cherish, or deaf, eno nase ben soramora. So then, if that is the circumstance, then the child cannot be made into a ben soramora. If the parent is unable to do any of these things, because the pasuk says, Shenemar, the pasuk says, v'taf subo, they have to grab him, v'lo gitrin. If he has no hand, can't grab him. V'otzio, so they take him out, v'lo chigrin, not somebody who has trouble walking. V'amru, v'lo ilmin, and he has to say to him, not somebody who's mute. Banenu zeh, this is our son. Below suing can't be a blind person. A nenu shomea bekolim doesn't listen to our voices. Below chershed, not a mute.
Could you do sign language to show what
no,
to do?
Because the pasuk says this is the way, and so this is the point that they're trying to make. This shows us that the pasuk has to be exactly as it's set out. All of these things have to be able to be done. If the person can't do it, he's got to do sign language, right? Then he cannot say, "This is our son." So then the son can't be a ben soramora. My taimo, what's the reason? Lav mishum deba'in kra kiritziv. Isn't it because this is the rule that we need the pasuk to be exactly as it's done, as it's written? So that doesn't prove it, because shani hasam by ben soramora it's different. Dekuli kra yiserahu, because this is not being learned because the pasuk is giving us a event and now we have to do the event exactly as specified. This is the old standard drush that we have always. The drush is that I've got an extra phrase in a pasuk that doesn't need to be written. And from that extra phrase, we're going to learn that something is required that we wouldn't have otherwise known. So therefore, since this entire pasuk is extra, it's telling me that every one of the stages or things that are in this pasuk that are extra are required, but not to tell me that, hey, this is a circumstance that happens, and so therefore, ideally, this should be the way that the order of things would occur, and now you have to do it that way. So it doesn't prove anything, because this is an unusual case, because the pasuk is specifically extra. Toshma, come and listen. Ein Allah rachov. What if you've got an ir nidachas, city that is worshipped idols? So you're supposed to take all of the materials into the town square and burn them. What if this town has no town square? Ein lo rachov, it has no street to be able to take everything out to. So onas ein nasis ir nidachas, can't be a nir nidachas, right? Because the pasuk says you're supposed to take it on the street. There's no street. So therefore, Divrei Rabbi Shmuel says, right? Same kind of ideas. Our psukim. Rabbi Akiva says, "Ein lo rachov, osin lo rachov." If it doesn't have one, make one, right? Ad kan lo pligi. So therefore, okay. So they don't have an argument. Elo demar sava rachova demikara ba'inan mar sava rachova dehashta nami kedemikara dami. They're not arguing that the pasuk has to be carried out exactly as stated. Their argument is simply whether you can add a road in later and say now we can do what the pasuk says. But they're all agreeing that you have to do exactly what the pasuk says. You have to put it in the street. Okay, I have no street. So fine, then you have an argument. If they have no street, so then it's too late, there's no street. Or do we make a street? About the kuli, but all of them, everybody agrees that you've got to have a street. Nobody's saying, okay, take it, there's no street, then just put it in wherever you got. So Tanaihi, so okay, fine, it's a machlokas Tanaim. We'll at least say this is a disagreement amongst Tanaim. The Tanai is we were in a Mishnah. Ein lo bohen yad. Let's say I've got somebody who has tzaras, right? The process of becoming tahor from tzaras requires the kohen to sprinkle blood from his offering and some oil on his ear, on his right thumb, and on his right big toe. What if he has ein lo bohen yad? He's got no thumb, bohen regel, or no big toe, ozen yamonis, or no right ear. So ein lo tahora olamis. He can never become tahor because the pasuk says that's the process. It's got to be on his right ear. Rabbi Eliezer says, no sinal makomo v'yotze. He says, no, if you don't have, then you put it where his thumb would be or where his ear would be, and that is sufficient. So again, they hold that you don't need the pasuk exact as written. Ideally, you do it follow the pasuk, but if the pasuk isn't able to be done, so then we're going to go to backup plan. And Rabbi Shimon Omer no saying al smolo v'yotze, and Rabbi Shimon says, no, you do follow, if you can't follow the pasuk, you do have to go to backup plan. He just disagrees about what the backup plan is. Not if you don't have a right thumb. So one opinion says you put it where the right thumb would be. He says, no, just put it on the left thumb, right? That's better to put it on the left thumb. Okay, Next Mishnah. Kol niskalin nitlin. Now, once the stoning has taken place, so then everybody who gets stoned has to get hung. Div Rabbi Eliezer, that's what Rabbi Eliezer says. V'cham says, Eno nitla ela ha-megadef v'ha'avoid avodah zarah. We don't hang everybody. We only hang people who have committed the crimes of blasphemy, of cursing, saying, cursing Hashem, or worshiping Avodah Zarah. Ha'ish tolonoso panav klape ha'am. The man is hung so that his face faces the people. Isha paneh klape ha'etz, and a woman is hung so that her back faces the people. Her face faces the wood. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer says, V'cham says, Ish nitla ve'ena isha nitlis. V'cham say, a man is hung, a woman is never hung at all. Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, V'halo Shimon ben Shetach tala nashim ba'Ashkelon. But 1 second, remember the story of Shimon ben Shetach, where he killed all those witches? And all the witches were hung in Ashkelon. So Amrulo, they said to him, Shmonim nashim tala ve'ein donin shneim b'yom echad. What are you talking about? You can't bring anything from Shimon ben Shetach, what he did there, because there were 80 ladies that were killed on the same day. And we have a rule that you're not supposed to judge more than one case per day anyway. So he was clearly doing something that was extraordinary under the circumstances, right? He was trying to, it was a war against the witchcraft. It wasn't a based-in action. It was more like an emergency, fight.
It wasn't another case. It was you can't judge the same case. Wasn't that what we said?
Oh, so we're going to discuss that exactly. Right. It sounds like these should be the same cases, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's if a bunch of ladies doing witchcraft, it should be a bunch of ladies doing witchcraft.
Give him poison apple.
Poison apple. It's a good. It's Tan Rabbanan. Vehumas vetalisa. Pasuk says that he's killed and then he's hung. Yachakol amumsin nitlin. You might think that everybody who's killed gets hung. Tamalomar. Pasuk says, "Ki killas Elokim talui," because the killas Hashem, the curse of Hashem is hanging. Ma mekalel zeh shebeskila, avkol shebeskila. So we're going to say that the mekalel, the one who curses Hashem, he gets hung, and then we're going to learn from there. Just like the one who curses Hashem gets hung, he gets skila and then gets hung. So too, everybody who gets skila then gets hung. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer.
Doesn't skila kill you?
Yes. You're dirty dead. You're being hung up. This is not to kill you.
Want to show you.
We're just demonstrating. This is what happens to such people.
Not to screw with us.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Right? The Chachamim say, Ma mekalo zeh shekafar be'ikar. the Makallel is somebody who is negating the main principles of Judaism. So Av Kol Shekafar Be'ikr. So only those that have violated that Aveira specifically are the ones who get hung. So Mamai Kamifagi, what is the point of their contention? Rabbanan Darshi Kal Uprate. So the Rabbanan have a rule of Kal Uprat. So here's how this works. When I've got a pasuk and I start off with a generality, right? So somebody says, you are not allowed to ride, and then that's a generality. That means I couldn't ride anything. Couldn't ride a car, couldn't ride a bicycle, I couldn't ride a horse, couldn't ride anything. Then I have a specific, a bicycle, okay? So I cannot ride, and then it says a bicycle. So now,
Why the gap though? You said you can't ride why the space between?
Oh, I'm going to say there's no space in between, right? Just that's the way I said. If I make a statement, I can't ride a bicycle. So if you're a doresh, this is my example, right? Torah doesn't say this, right? But if you're a doresh, what's called a klal uprat, my generality is riding. My bicycle is specific. That means that the only thing I cannot ride is a bicycle, because it says you cannot ride, and then gives me a specific, a bicycle. Okay, that's people who learn klal uprat. We have another way of learning things that's called a riboy and a miut. A riboy and a miut, they look at it like this. I cannot ride, that's the generality. And then the bicycle is the item, which is the limiter. And it means not specifically bicycles, but all things that are in some way similar to bicycles. I.e., all of those things that have wheels. I could still ride a horse. I could still ride a boat, but I cannot ride a car. I cannot ride a bicycle. I cannot ride a unicycle, a train, right? So that's my riboy umiyut. That's how a riboy umiyut works versus a kal uprat works. And it's a difference of viewpoint which way you learn these psukim. Okay? Now, Rabbanan darshi klal uprati. Here in this circumstance, the Rabbanan are going to learn klal uprat, and Rabbi Eliezer darsh riboy umiyuti, and Rabbi Eliezer are going to follow this rule of riboy umiyut. So Rabbanan, how does this work? Rabbanan darshi klal uprati. The Rabbanan are going to learn the klal uprat. So vehumas vitalisa. So it says that they're going to get killed and then they're going to get hung. So that's klal. That's the generality. That seems to imply everybody gets killed, gets hung. So kikilas, that's the person, because the person who is the klala, so that's the only people who get hung are the people who are the klala, who are the curse of Hashem. That's prat, that's the detail. So now, the Gemara says like this, little detail that this is an unusual circumstance. If, like I specified it, you cannot ride a bicycle. Those two things are written right next to each other. So then, if that were the case, and we had written you have to hang all those that have violated or who are the killas Hashem, so then, Amrinon in Bechal Omashe B'Prat, we would have said, the only ones that can get hung are just these people who are killas Hashem. So honey in midiachrini lo, then it would be only these specific ones, nobody else. We turn the page to Mem Vav Amud Aleph. Hashta b'merach mahadodi. But now that the pasuk splits these two things separated from each other, normally a klal uprat, the words will be written right next to each other. In this circumstance, there's a whole pasuk separating between the two. Vehumas v'talisa is in one pasuk, then it says kikilas Hashem is in the next pasuk. Now that I've got a space, it's going to show me that the pasuk doesn't intend for me to be as strict in the limitation of those that are called the kilas Hashem. I'm going to expand it a little bit more than I normally do.
What's the reason for this part over here?
Which, the Tosfos?
Right over here.
Yeah, there's very small Tosfos on this page. There are three, but very small Tosfos. That's what that is over there. So the answer is, Ahani l'rebuye avodos kachamim dedamim le bechol mili. We're going to not only have the one that blasphemes and curses Hashem, we are going to also add in one more. And that's going to be the one who commits avodah zarah, because it's very similar to the case of somebody who blasphemes Hashem. And so therefore, the Rabbanan really are learning klal uprat. But this is a klal uprat with a little bit of an asterisk. Hence, we'll add one more thing in. But that's it. So that's the only two. Those are the only two that get hung. For Rabbi Eliezer, Dorish Riboy Miyuti. Rabbi Eliezer is going to learn Riboy Miyut. Vehumas v'talisa Riboy. That Humas v'talisa is the total, is the generality. Everybody's supposed to get killed, gets hung. Kikilulas, because he is the curse of Hashem. That's the Miyut. That is the limiter. Now, Ihavi Mikarvi Hadadi, if the two of them were written together, Lohavu Marbinan Ella Avodas Kachavim Dedamile. If they were together, so I would have known that it would have included not just the person who is a blasphemer, but also other things that are similar, like Avodah Zarah. But only those things that are similar, exactly similar, right? Avodah Zarah. But now that they're going to be spread apart a little bit, we'll be a little bit looser with our interpretation there. So we're going to include all of the skila cases as well. So all other skila cases as well. So that's the technical element as to why different people are hung in, according to the two different opinions. Now, Ha'ish Tolin, we're going to hang the man facing the nation. Ma'itama de Rabbanan. What is the Rabbanan's reasoning? Amar Kra, the pasuk says, V'talisa oso, we hang him. Oso v'lo oso, only him, not her. The Chum say we don't hang women up at all. Rabbi Eliezer, oso below ksuso. So the Rabbanan, Rabbi Eliezer says, the word oso means him. We hang him without garments. But a lady, we're going to put garments on. That's all. But she's going to get hung as well.
Why does she get hung if it says we don't hang the woman?
Because he's going to explain the word oso means him, himself, without something else. Now, according to the Rabbanan, the other thing that doesn't get hung is a woman. According to this, the other thing that doesn't get hung is their clothes. So only the man gets hung without his clothes. But a woman gets hung together with her clothes. For Rabbanan, in achinami. So Rabbanan will say, okay, that's a good point. You're right. That is the drush of that pasuk. Rather, we're going to try again. Ella, Amar Kro, the pasuk says, V'chiya b'ish chet. When there's a man who does an avera, so ish v'lo isha, only a man who gets this avera, that he's going to be hung. Rabbi Eliezer, hi, v'chiya b'ish, my darshbe. What does he do with this pasuk that says a man gets hung, not a woman? Amar Reish Lakish says, Hahulim ute ben sora umora. The man is not coming to exclude a woman; it's coming to exclude a ben sora umora, this rebellious and wayward son who does not get hung because he's not a man, right? He's a child. So therefore, he's not going to get hung. Ve'atanya, but we're going to brisa ben sora umora niska v'nitla. Diver Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, but he gets skila and then he gets hung. So El Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says that can't be the answer. The Rabbos ben Sora Mora, it comes to include a ben Sora Mora. My taimo, what is the reason? Damar Kol, the pasuk says, V'chiyeh be'ish chet, when it comes to a man who has such an avera, ish velo ben chet, right? It has to be a man, not a child who has a chet. Misha al cheton neharag, it has to be a person who is being killed because he's done the avera. Yatza ben Sora Mora al shum sofo nerag, but a ben Sora Mora is not being killed for the avera that he commits. All he does is steal, and it's the potential avera that he's going to commit that we are killing him now.
But also, he's not dying by strangulation. He's dying by skila.
Yes, but all of these are cases where dying by skila.
Right. So I thought the hanging. I thought the hanging was specific to the act of kill. Like
the hanging is not killing. The hanging is simply.
It's just after the fact.
That's correct.
Okay. Fine.
The hanging does not kill.
So therefore, the Ben Sora Umar is left there.
That's correct.
The Ben Sora Umar. Who is that again?
We're going to discuss him. We're going to discuss him later. So I wasn't going into great detail, but we have got a rebellious son who violates certain commandments, but he gets killed even though he violates things that don't seem to require a death penalty. We'll see. We'll see that chapter's coming up. So we'll hang on to him, right? So the answer is havi miod achar miod. The answer is we've got two places now, which says ish, and it says oso. It says oso beish chet, and it says oso. So now it's got two different places that would limit a son from being hung. So ve'in miod achar miod el rabbos. We have a principle that if it says twice not something, right? It's a double negative, which means a positive, which means that the Ben Sora Mora does get hung. So therefore, only the Ben Sora Mora gets hung, but not a woman. Okay. Lahan, Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer says, "V'halo Shimon ben Shetach Talon Noshim." But Shimon ben Shetach says, "Hey, wait a second. What about all those ladies that Shimon ben Shetach hung? How did he do that?" And they answered, "Well, that was it was not a regular based in action." Amar Rav Chisda lo shana ol b'shtei misos. But one second, what was the problem? We said that he could kill all those ladies because they, as long as it's all the same court case, what's the problem? So the answer is what the case of Shimon ben Shetach we're going to see also. So we're going to see Rashi points out that the reason why Shimon ben Shetach shouldn't have been able to carry out 80 death sentences because not all of them were doing the same type of witchcraft.
Right.
So some had Ov, some had Yid Oni, some had some were reading bones and some were reading tea leaves. So since they all had different methods of telling the future or doing their witchcraft, it was not the same case. Therefore, Shimon and Shetach should not have been able to kill all 80 in a row. So therefore, they were bringing proof. Why was Shimon and Shetach did it? So the answer is, they tried to answer to Misa Achas Halvai. It was all one death sentence. They did witchcraft. The Ka'amru lay, but they said back, De'ein donin ella de'ein donin, right? Ella itmar hachi itmar. He says, but wait a second. But they told him, you can't testify. You can't, even though they're all getting the same Misa, they're not supposed to be doing it if it's not the same Aveira, right? So they're not, even though you're right, they all would have gotten skila for whatever witchcraft they did, since they were all a different case, they shouldn't have been able. So rather, let's read it like this. Lo shanu ela b'misa achas ke'ein shtei misos. That you can't consider, you can't you can't judge this case unless they are going to have one lo shanu ela b'misa achas ke'ein shtei misos. If it's the same death sentence, but two different crimes that they committed. Vehechi dami, for example, could go shtei averos. If they do completely two different separate averos, but even though they're both skila. Aval b'misa achas v'avera achas, but if they were both did the same thing, we had that circumstance, they did the same avera, and therefore they get the same misa, done, and then they could teach, then they could do it in the same day. Meisev Rav Ada Barava, so Rav Ada Barava asked a question, Ein don shnayim b'yom echad v'afilu b'noif v'no efes. 1 second, we said that you're not allowed to judge two in one day, even if one's an adulterer and one's an adulteress. Same case, can't judge it in the same day. And Tergum Rav Chisda explains, Bas Kohen uboala. We're talking about a Bas Kohen. She gets a misa of sreifa, and that's going to be a different misa than the person who is the boel. O Bas Kohen, or we're talking about the daughter of a Kohen, v'zomim zomimeha, and we're talking about the zomimim of the zomimim who cannot receive the same death sentence that she receives because they are not Bas Kohanim, so they don't receive the same death sentence. So therefore, under those circumstances, the person who you are judging at the same time as the person that the two different people that you're judging are getting a different death sentence. I'm trying to get to the Mishnah. Tanya, we learn Rabbi Yaakov says, Shemati, shebeistin makin ve'onshin shelo min ha-Torah, v'lo la'avor al divrei Torah. Right? This was Brian's question all along. I heard that Beis can give a punishment that is against the Torah, because that's what Shimon ben Shetach was doing in a circumstance where there's no punishment that could have been Beis Din didn't have a punishment that they could have deserved. They created a new punishment and killed the witches a different way. So we're allowed to do that. El kidei lasos siag laTorah. Why are we doing it? Even though it's not something the Torah told us to do, we're doing it as a protection for the Torah. There was once a story of a fellow who rode a horse on Shabbos. Right, and riding a horse on Shabbos is an issa d'Rabbanan. It's a rabbinic violation. But he did it during the Greek times. They brought, and during the Greek times where they were trying to invalidate the keeping of Shabbos, and it was a difficult time. So they brought him to court, uskalu, and they stoned him. Not because that was the appropriate punishment for that crime. The time required that. That was the appropriate punishment for the time. So shuv ma'aseh adam echad sheitiachas isho tachas hata'ena. There was another story where a person had relations with his wife under a fig tree, out in the open, and it was not right to be able to do such a thing. But what's the aveira? Right? There's no aveira. No, it's not his wife. It's his wife. So v'heviyuhu lebesin, they brought him to basin. V'hilkuhu, and they gave him lashes. Right? Lo mibnei sheroi lekach. Not because that was the punishment. Ella shashat tzricha lekach. It's just that there was a lot of promiscuity going on, and so they wanted to be able to make sure that they got rid of it. So therefore, the Beis Din can use extra punishments. So that's what Shimon ben Shetach did. So therefore, what they tried to say in the Mishnah is, Shimon ben Shetach hung all of these witches, and they were ladies. The answer is, Shimon ben Shetach hung all the ladies, and they were witches, not because that he was following the rules. Shimon ben Shetach was going outside the rules. We say, well, wait a second, he's not going outside the rules. He's allowed to judge more than one case in one day. The answer is no, he wasn't. He wasn't allowed to judge more than one case in one day. Shimon ben Shetach was going outside the rules. He had 80 witches, and we knew that, I guess, hanging makes a good sense in how to punish them, because he couldn't let them touch the ground, if you remember, right? So therefore, they can't touch the ground. So therefore, hanging them was a great way to kill them, but killing 80 of them at once.
She's on the broom, she's flying. You can't touch the ground if she's on her broom flying.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, brooms flying is a separate question. I don't know if they had that as the witches. All right, so we'll stop here.
My question is not about